Hey, Purpleella here and welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about autism and the workplace, which is obviously a video that I can't make on my own because I work from home with my dog. So what I've done is I've brought in my friend Simon, who works in an office full-time, so has masses of experience of this particular area and can definitely give us lots of information if you're someone who is autistic and works in an environment around other people where this might be an issue. So the first thing that I think about when I think about autism and an actual workplace is disclosure. Who do you tell? Why do you want to tell them? What are the pros and cons of declaring your diagnosis?
Yeah, so that's right. There's quite a lot of things to consider when thinking about whether to disclose or not. So there's a few options. One is to not tell anyone. Then the next step up is to discreetly tell a few people, and then you can be the third option was to be able to disclose fully to everyone. So there's lots of things to consider. So by not telling anyone, the first option, I think there's some limitations in doing that. I think it's useful to have your employer know about your condition, so in case there's any issues coming up in the future, you can then you can refer back to your employer to say, you've disclosed your condition to them and you expect some support or some consideration of that.
Yeah, so if you're not disclosing, you're not going to get any support.
That's right. So the benefit of disclosing in some way is that you then get more access to reasonable adjustments, which we're going to talk about a bit later. So that leads, the next step is to sort of disclose discreetly or disclose more openly. So by disclosing discreetly, by this I mean recording this on your sort of human resource profile, your file that the organisation holds about you. So this often contains details about your age or date of birth and your salary and things like that, but there's normally an option to tell them about your conditions as well.
Can I ask who has access to that document?
So normally this would be sort of the HR team or manager in your organisation, and your assigned line manager or other sort of supervisors involved with your work. So usually they would have access to it, and of course all of this information is sort of covered by the Data Protection Act, so it should be secure. And
if it's not secure, you know where it's come from.
Yes, that's the idea. So that's one way of sort of discreetly notifying your employer of your condition. Another option is to discreetly inform your line manager as well, sort of in a verbal and written manner. So I would recommend having a chat with your line manager, mentioning to them about your condition, how it affects you, and how things would be easier for you in work if your line manager takes that into account. By doing this, I'd recommend sort of doing it verbally as well. You can do this privately in a meeting room or something like that, but also to follow that up with a written email as well, so that you've got a sort of a written record of you notifying your line manager that you've got a condition and that you might need some support in working with that condition. And then the other option is to disclose openly. So this is, I think, the option that requires the most sort of consideration, and you need to take into account your workplace environment and perhaps your colleagues as well, of how they might interact with you and things like that once you've disclosed, if you choose to disclose, that is.
And also, I guess, how far that information is going to go.
Yes, so potentially there's sort of pros and cons of disclosing that sort of information. So pros are your colleagues and your line manager would be more aware, so they can sort of take that into account in how they interact with you, or how they set you tasks, or how they appraise you at the end of the year. But on the other side, they also might be of a detriment to you, and I think you need to sort of make that judgment yourself about what your sort of workplace is like and how people might react to you disclosing your condition. As we said, it's quite a sort of personal thing, and everyone's different, and therefore they'll interact with you in different ways, depending on what they know about you. I think a diverse society and a diverse organisation is something that we like to strive for, and that often means that people have different opinions and different views and so on. So they might not all be positive, some might be negative. So that's something you'd need to take into account.
Not everyone has to be at the front of this war, if you like, in that I'm out there going, I'm autistic and everyone can know about that because it's nothing I should be ashamed of. But that's not an easy position to sit in for me at all times, and not everyone is in the right place in their lives to be doing that. So
that's right, yes.
It's a valid choice to keep your personal information personal too.
Yeah, so from my perspective, I've only discreetly disclosed because I'm still fairly early on in my career, so I'm a little bit concerned about if I openly disclose how that might impact me in terms of promotion, progression and getting good reports at the end of the year and so on, whilst I'm sort of in that developmental stage of building up my experience and knowledge and so on. So I've chosen to discreetly inform my line manager. She's sort of supportive and understands it and is aware, so that's quite good for me, but disclosing more openly, I'm not sure if I can handle the sort of negative sides of that at the moment. So
yeah, I mean, having known you for a couple of years now,
yeah,
I can't imagine you being comfortable with everybody knowing about your diagnosis, to be honest.
That's right, yeah.
You're just not that kind of person. So,
yeah.
And that's totally valid, and I would imagine it's probably the larger majority of people are sitting in that camp.
Yeah, I believe so. I think just from my experience, I think there might be quite a few people who are diagnosed but don't sort of openly disclose it.
I mean, I'm not disclosing. It's not the first thing I tell everyone.
No, me neither. So
So, having dealt with disclosure, thinking about workplace adjustments, can I kind of ask you what kinds of workplace adjustments might you ask for? Now, bearing in mind, Simon works in an office, not a building site or a shop or a restaurant, so what he's talking about is going to be specific to that situation, but it will give you an idea of thinking about what your workplace is like and how to approach that. So in your particular working life, what kinds of adjustments can be useful?
Yeah, so I think there's sort of two sort of types of adjustments. So one's the sort of the tangible, sort of the physical adjustments. So this might be having a fixed desk or a certain location in the office that you might work, or having other kinds of aids made available to support you. So you might have like a special calendar so you can keep track of tasks, or a notebook or something like that. And then there's maybe the sort of less tangible things where you can get flexible working. So this is where you can start and leave the office when you like, within reason, as long as you're doing your required hours over the week or over whatever period it is. And this allows you to sort of work around your routines a bit more, or medical appointments, or pick up children from school, that sort of thing. And I think that's quite beneficial.
Yeah. Or even, I think some autistic people find they're more productive at particular points in the day.
Yes, so for example, I like to have a mixture of different tasks that I can swap between, and this allows me to sort of maybe keep my focus a bit more consistent throughout the day, but still be sort of productive as well. Whereas if I just have one task, I think if I was working on that for like 7-8 hours a day, then I'll be certainly a lot less effective at the end of the day, or if not much sooner during the day.
Can I ask specifically about, now I have massive issues with verbal instructions. So if someone gave me a set of instructions verbally, there's absolutely no chance I would remember what I was supposed to be doing. And I know that this is a common issue. Is that an issue for you? How are you given tasks in the first place?
So normally it'd be verbally discuss task with my line manager or whoever's giving me tasks. But what I quite like, what's quite helpful to me is to have that task written down, so at least maybe have either the steps that I need to do, or maybe some of the outcomes that the person is expecting, and then I can use that as a reminder of what I need to do and when I need to do it by. It's in writing. I can refer back to it, and I can understand it a bit more as well. And I find that that useful for me.
Yeah, that sounds really useful. So what I'm getting from this is basically the best plan moving forward is to look at your work environment, consider the ways in which you work best and in which you are most comfortable working, and to come up with a plan for some reasonable adjustments that might help you to work at your best, because actually if you're working at your best, then that is good for your employer as well. So once you've reached the point of knowing what you want, how do you then take that to your employer?
So some organisations, I'm not sure if this is true for all of them, but at least for mine, they have a formal process in place for requesting reasonable adjustments. And so I would recommend that you try and find out if your organisation has this, and then you can follow the steps in that process, and hopefully that should tell you how to get those adjustments and when you might get them and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't necessarily have that in place, I think either way it's useful to have a discussion with your line manager as well. So they're the person there who's giving you tasks, so it's going to impact on them the most if you're not delivering on their tasks.
Sure.
So it's useful to have that discussion with your line manager. Say, tell them about reasonable adjustments and why you think you might need them. So it's helpful to include, what is the issue, why is it an issue for you, and how could you how could that issue be resolved for you to enable you to work better.
And I guess it might be useful to really highlight the fact that this is going to make you work more efficiently, because that's ultimately what they want.
That's the intention, yes. So what often happens is once you've got these reasonable adjustments in place, it might be like once a year or once every 6 months, your employer might want to review your reasonable adjustments to sort of check that it is being effective or it is still correct to do so and still a benefit. So that's something they might do. Another part of the process is they might want to do an assessment on you, so a workplace assessment. So essentially this will look at you, they'll ask you questions about your condition and how this relates to your work and the workplace environment. So this might be done internally, or they might refer you to an external service that provides that workplace assessment.
Okay.
And normally the outcome of that assessment is they produce a report, and that gets submitted to HR or whoever provides the reasonable adjustments, and that informs them of what adjustments are suitable from an assessor's viewpoint. And sometimes that's also accompanied by your diagnosis letter if you have one, or other sort of medical letter, and that's usually what's required to support a reasonable adjustment request, and it helps sort of underpin that case for you.
Okay, and I guess it's probably important also to make sure that anything that has been agreed is formally recorded.
Yes, so that's the benefit of having this workplace assessment, is that they produce a written report that says what they've discussed with you and what the suggested adjustments are, and then that's a written record that you can give to your employer and say, it'd be really good if I could have these reasonable adjustments, please. However, probably should add that it's probably not a mandated requirement for your employer to support those reasonable adjustments. They've got to make a judgment of whether it's sort of value for money and it is a benefit, and whether they can provide that for you. So they are just suggestions. I don't think your employer is obliged to implement
all of them.
those.
Yeah, okay.
But that's something to discuss thereafter once you've had your assessment, and go from there.
Okay, great. So I guess the other kind of major issue for me, if I were to be put in the middle of an office right now to work, would be the sort of social aspect. Now I know for me the only social aspect that I have to deal with in the day is the school run, and that's like 15 minutes at the start, at the end of the day, and that still takes some negotiating. So I'd imagine being kind of full-time in an office, there are some considerations there as well.
Yes, definitely. I think there's both sort of considerations within the workplace and sort of outside the workplace as well. So there's often like social functions associated. You might have the Christmas party each year, or or beers after work, that type of thing.
Yeah.
So in the office, I think communication is quite important, and alongside this, sort of micro behaviours as well. So things like body language, eye contact, sort of the small talk, all these sorts of things. The way you're presenting yourself could either smooth your working day, or it might make it more difficult. And so I think this is sort of linked into sort of masking and things like that. It's trying to get along with your colleagues throughout the day, and
I like to call it oiling the wheels.
Yes, that's right. That's a good way of putting it. So I think bearing those sorts of things in mind will make working with your colleagues easier, because they're not necessarily going to adjust to your condition. They're not going to change their behaviours as much as you're probably willing to change yours.
And before the outrage, because I would imagine some of my viewers are now like, what? No, we should be out. The reality and the ideal at the current time that we live are two separate things. And so I know that I personally, even being an autism advocate and being very out there about my autism, still use these kinds of social skills that Simon is describing when I am interacting with a GP or a teacher at the school, or someone who, like you said, isn't necessarily going to be understanding or accommodating, and whether rightly or wrongly they are, that is just the reality. And at the same time, I think that everybody, autistic or not, is doing this to some extent, so that we can all knock along happily.
So this is where I was mentioning earlier about your work environment. You've heard of things like office politics. It's about
staying out of them?
Yeah, staying out of the politics. And
which is something I'm really, really bad at.
No, everyone at work is, in a way, acting a little bit to get through the work, get their work done, interact with their colleagues, and that sort of thing. So I think it's sometimes you have to compromise on your ideologies sometimes of that side of things.
I agree,
But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think you're there to work, so you're not necessarily obliged to be social with everyone. If you're doing your work and you're delivering on your tasks and doing well, and essentially doing what your line manager wants, then to be social and do that sort of thing.
That's a personal preference, isn't
it's
it? Really,
preference,
presumably.
Really. Yeah.
Okay, great.
So that was inside the office. The other thing people sometimes struggle with, as well as speaking words like me, is socialising outside the office. So inevitably, office socials do arise, like the Christmas party and so on.
And do you go to these kinds of social events?
I go to some of them, not necessarily all of them. Often it tends to be like a group meal or a trip down the pub.
I like eating. I'd probably do that.
I like eating, and it's something that I'm comfortable doing, because there's some people in the office that I know that I'm sort of friends with, I'm comfortable with. So when you go to like a group meal or a bar or something, you can sit with them or drink with them. You don't have to mingle with people you don't know or who you don't like. So
although I'm sure you like everyone in your office.
Naturally, yes. So I think that's an option, and also I don't think you need to feel obliged to sort of stay throughout the evening. So sometimes these office things they like to go on throughout the night, involving more drinking, more eating, or other activities. So I think you've got to
sorry, other activities. Just saying.
I think you've got to have a sort of good self-awareness of what the things you like to do and what your preference is, and feel comfortable not to feel obliged to stay out or keep up with the drinking.
Because actually, it's only going to be a small minority that do that anyway. The majority of people are going to be wanting to leave at a reasonable hour.
Yes.
I would imagine.
And I think related to that, sort of planning ahead for the gathering, the social gathering, also helps as well. So think about how you're going to get there, how you're going to get home. You can look up menus in advance. If it's at a restaurant, they're often online, aren't they, these days? So you can sort of decide what you're going to eat in advance and just order it.
Because actually, you get there and you start talking, and you're supposed to also focus on a menu, which can be a bit of a challenge.
That's right, yeah. And the other thing is just remember you've got your cash or your credit card with you, so that you're not going to have any issues with that and get in a panic or feel like you're going to have to ask someone else to pay for you or something. So that helps with that sort of a good preparation.
So sort of the usual autism related, I like to know where I'm going, what I'm doing, and that I've got everything organised before I get there type stuff.
Yeah.
Additionally, I'd also say that it's actually perfectly reasonable, and I do this if I've got to go to some kind of work event, to have a few kind of pre-ideas of starter topics for conversations.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. So I try and think of a few things that are happening with my colleagues, so not necessarily in the workplace, but they might have just bought a house or got a new dog had a baby, gone for a bike ride, something like that. So I can ask them about those sorts of things. But I guess ultimately, if you're struggling to think of those sort of more social topics, then you can resort back to work topipics. But I'd try and avoid that if possible, because
or even the usual kind of, are you going on holiday in the summer, or how's your renovation? I know that for me personally, it's partly just reminding myself that a normal topic of conversation is, are you going on holiday this summer? Not, what do you think about the lesser spotted whale and its situation in the sea right now? Do you know what I mean? It's just reminding yourself of what the expected behaviour is in these kinds of situations.
Yeah, just stick to the sort of typical small talk topics is a good starter. Then
then it can kind of expand.
And so on. Also, quite often in these office socials, they do tend to be these group meals and bar stuff, but you can feel free to suggest alternative options that
something you'd actually want to do,
because sometimes people are happy to do that. So there's things like barbecues, or you can go to maybe the board game cafe or a comedy festival. These are all socials that we've done at work, and
actually what's really good about those kinds of things, like the board game cafe or the comedy stuff, is that it's a thing that you are doing together rather than just being sat talking
and having to talk. Whereas at least if you've got like the board game, you can sort of focus on that for a bit or work out your next move, so it's not obliging you to talk about things. If you're at comedy, then all you have to try and do is laugh if the jokes are funny enough, of course. So
I think that's why geeks love board games, to be honest with you. I know that's why I love board games, is partly it means that I get to be around other people, which I do love, but without that social pressure.
Yes.
I like doing activities, definitely, and I think that's a really common thing in the autism community, and I think it's really great that you've suggested, why not suggest doing something that's comfortable for you?
Yeah, so I think offices, they should be inclusive and recognising of everyone in the office. So often there's just a core group of people that always want to go out for drinks, they always want to go to clubs or whatever, but not everyone in the office wants to do that. Other people might prefer to do a barbecue or go play a board game instead. And so if you're suggesting that, then it might be an option that's taken up and carried forward. So.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, well, thank you for joining me today. I think this has been really useful. If you've got something specific that you would like to ask Simon that he hasn't talked about today, do leave a comment in the comment box below, and I will show you how to go and reply to comments, if that's okay with you.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
And also, if you'd like us to talk about a specific, like in more detail, it's possible that we could make another video, so do let us know if that's something that you are interested in. As always, don't forget to share this video, because I think this is a really useful and important topic for us to talk about, and if you liked it, do click that thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you aren't already, to receive my weekly content straight in your subscription box. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.